Hi guys, following Google's caught and spam updates, I thought it'd be worth taking you through the exact content tactics that we've been getting SEO success with. Now, these tips, these tactics, have evolved over the last 7 or 8 years or so. They take into account the Google documentation about creating helpful content. They also consider the quality rated guidelines. And some of this has actually just come from testing different things and seeing what works, right? So if you do watch to the end, I'll also give you a snippet of how we structure these into our 10-page brief for a writer as well. Now, if you like this kind of content, if you want to see more of it, then please like the video and of course subscribe to the channel below. Okay, let's get into it.
So this is the checklist. As I said, we've got just shy of 20 items or so. Much of this has come from Google documentation, the quality rated guidelines, but as I said, a lot of our own testing as well. And these are the recommendations that we provide our clients. Quite often, our clients will have specialist writers, they'll have subject matter experts that essentially have all the knowledge, all the experience required to write a killer piece of content. But this just ensures that we're giving SEO that consideration as well, right? Now, as I said, wait till the end, and of course I'll give you a brief insight into how we structure this into a sort of a briefing template as well. I will say that of course we do create content as an agency as well, but quite often a lot of our clients will have sort of content resource. So let's dive into it. So checklist item above the fold. The key here for us really is to provide as much value to the user as early as we can. So we see the above the fold real estate, well, essentially as essential real estate, right? So you want to do a number of things there. The first one is to provide the sort of quick fire answers and summaries to the content. If you have a 2,000 to 3,000 word piece, what's the example here? So if we're talking about what is a performance improvement plan and how do you create one, it's a 3,000 word article. We might put in our key takeaway: a performance improvement plan is a structured process that helps employees identify areas for improvement and develop strategies to enhance their performance. So we've essentially answered it straight away. So if the user just wanted a quick definition to reference somewhere, there it is. Of course, as we go further down the page, we go into more depth around the specific topic areas that make up a performance improvement plan, and we may even provide like a takeaway or a checklist or a piece of downloadable content that they can physically use when trying to implement this, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing we want to do is communicate our expertise, our trust, our authority, and our experience within the subject as well. So usually we'll try and include the author bio there. We'll try and give a bit of a reference or a point to someone that's copy edited it as well. So if you can have sort of 2 authors above the fold, even better. And we may even give a bit of a breakdown as to the author profile as well, i.e. they've got 10 years working in HR, or 10 years sort of managing people or something like that. So it helps to sort of give some signals as to what the trust is of the person, and it's not necessarily what the content is, but it's saying why you should listen to the author as well. So above the fold, really critical real estate, and we try and provide as much value as we can, i.e. the key sort of breakdowns of the content, whilst also sort of giving them reasons as to why they should trust this author as well. Really, really important. Information gaps. I do believe that this is something that Google and actually all search engines are looking more for within content. So in some cases, it's not necessarily what you say, or in some cases, it's not necessarily what's already on the SERP. It's actually what isn't on the SERP. So what new information can you bring to a particular query? For example, if we have the first sort of 3 to 5 listings for a certain keyword are all sort of saying 85% of the same thing, what we want to do is sort of bring a new sort of angle to a piece of content or a keyword. We want to bring maybe a new sort of timely piece of information to it, for example. The theory here is that Google will look at this and say, oh, this piece of information isn't actually spoken about on page 1, but the user searching that keyword might find this information useful. So therefore, I'm going to promote that article to page 1 for those reasons. So the information gap task is we task our writers to essentially dig into their experience, dig into where their communities are, and ensure that they're including information that really won't come up on our keyword research tools. It won't come up on any sort of topical map tools or anything where we sort of help structure content. This stuff won't come up, but it's integral to ensuring that we're giving something Google that they haven't necessarily sort of rendered or put into their index just yet. So number 3 here. So when using headlines that are like what are benefits, features, types, anything really that can be provided in a bullet point list, do it. So in the cases here, essentially what we try and explain to the writers are, if you're outlining a set of features for a SaaS product, for example, create a bullet point list explaining what those features are, and then underneath the list, that's when you can explain a little bit more about what those features are. And I think the example here is if you've got an article that is what are the benefits of B2B marketing, you might list out 3 key benefits. So increased website traffic, increased pipeline for sales, increased brand reputation. What you then want to do is go into more information about increased website traffic. So by marketing your B2B business, you can, and then you'll give a bit of an explanation around sort of how increased website traffic is a benefit of B2B marketing, for example. It's so critical that you structure the content in this particular way. So Google see this structure as a positive user experience signal. That's because it's written for scanners. We know that the sort of average attention span of a user these days is far shorter than what it was 10, 11, 12 years ago. So this sort of structure enables scanners to pick up the key information that they want. In a sense, it's a similar sort of theory as to why we provide like the key takeaways or the summaries above the fold at the top of the article, because it gives those users that just want the key sort of headlines the opportunity to capture those without having to sort of read through blocks of text to figure out what that is. So list out the bullet points and then give sort of the explanations after as to the reasons why those bullet points are there, or to context around the bullet points. So sentence structure as well, something that may appear super simple, but incredibly underutilized. And I've actually lost count the number of times where we've had our client on page 1, we've tweaked the content structure so that they're BERT friendly, and essentially we've managed to capture the featured snippet from being sort of position 8, position 9 on that first page. So what do we mean by implementing BERT friendly content structures? It's probably best to show it in an example here. So if the heading is how much does a B2B marketer make, the sentence below this heading should start the average B2B marketer makes between X and Y. So therefore the sentence is clearly answering the question above it. And it can be a subtle change as to going from the average B2B marketer makes, or the average B2B marketer is making, even sort of tenses can impact this. The best way to know how to go about answering the query is quite simply to have a look at how the competitor has answered it within that featured snippet and just replicating it. So if they start their answer by saying the average B2B marketer makes, you should then start yours the average B2B marketer makes. But of course you can give a different answer, but structuring it like that and actually answering the query is absolutely critical to even having a chance of capturing the featured snippet, basically. Go inch wide, mile deep. This, in a sense, is just covering the topic extensively, right? So don't veer away too much from the page purpose. So the examples we've used here is if you did have a piece of content, again, around how much does a B2B marketer make? Well, okay, you could answer it quite simply as we have above, saying the average B2B marketer makes between X and Y. In theory, you could technically leave it there, right? You've answered the query. But what we want to do is essentially offer more depth around this answer, because then we can be confident that we've sort of covered all the information surface area that the user might be looking for. So from a UK perspective, we can have a look at that average salary industry breakdown. We can get this from reputable sources. We can have a look at salary brackets based on experience. We can then take into account tax, national insurance, student loan. We can also look at sort of cost of living, UK inflation. We can work it out all in real time. So you see how we can go super deep with this without going too wide. And covering a topic extensively is something that you want to do in your content moving forward, instead of going broader and staying sort of very surface level with your answers. Internal links, I won't dive into this too much. It's a concept that's been around since day dot. We always try and encourage really as many internal links that we believe are going to be useful for the user. What we do try and do is we don't try and offer an internal link sort of above the fold. From our experience, we found that trying to, in theory, take the user away from the content to a supplement resource isn't really a helpful signal. If anything, just cite it at the bottom of the article. But actually, where internal links really prove their worth are being contextual. The content before and after them are relevant to that link. That link is keyword rich in some respects. And as a general rule of thumb, we've actually found that content that has more internal links throughout the articles that are put there sort of naturally. So in some cases, articles are written, internal links are applied after. They've tended to do well, anecdotally. So that's what we say to the writers is, include them where they feel natural, or where they sort of flow, or where they really do supplement the reader. Otherwise, just leave them out. Sort of anchor text ratios as well. This is really getting into the weeds of it a little bit. Now, if you do want to apply some data to this, then quite simply analyze the SERP, have a look at what competition does with their anchor text ratios, and simply try and replicate that as best you can. As I said, from an anecdotal point of view, if you've got sites that are DR 60, 70, 80 plus, I would almost say that just including internal links to supplementary piece of content that are naturally sort of buried within the pre-existing content, regardless of anchor text, passes sort of all the authority you need. If you're a smaller site, sort of sub 40, 50, I would say, then make those anchors a little bit more keyword rich in general, right? But I would always sort of say first thing, have a look at what competitors are doing, try and match their ratios as best you can, and then sort of go from there. Linking to supplement content as well. So in this instance, the content here should be related but not directly correlated to the main point. So an example here is you could have an article on anti-glare sunglasses, you could link to blue sunglasses, and then you could link to talking about eye health, for example. So you see how it's not talking specifically about the topic in question. It's essentially like support topics that sort of make up that main topic. So we've gone from anti-glare to blue to eye health. There's a logical sort of flow there between the articles. So do be very particular about the types of content you do link out to as well. In the example we've used, if the page contents how much does a B2B marketer make, supplementary content could be how much does a B2C marketer make, quite simply. Fact versus opinion as well. In Google sort of recent updates, they've actually cited an example where if facts are easily sort of validated or substantiated, and what by that they mean if you put them into Google and it's quite obvious what the answer is, and you get that fact incorrect, that could work against you. It could be sort of deemed as low EEAT, and therefore your EEAT score will be low. So quite simply, get your facts right. If you can have a second person that validates them, and again, we put them in the author, we could say authored by Ben Alfrey, fact checked by Jim Jones, for example, that can help sort of validate the trust of the page, basically. So just make sure you get your facts right, especially if they're ones that are easily Googled and easily sort of validated as well. The second part to this is making it clear when talking about facts and or opinions in an article. So, make it obvious that this is a fact and here's my opinion to it. Make sure that the two aren't sort of intertwined where you can't pick out one from the other. And I think in the example here, quite simply, you could just put a heading name, the facts, right? Super boring, but, it gets the point across clearly. People first content, Google's been talking about this since the helpful content update. in September last year. So what they mean by this is, where possible, demonstrate that first-hand experience and depth of knowledge in a subject. I mentioned at the start, quite a few of our clients have spent many years in the industry, in the sort of SaaS industry they're working, or the B2B industry, whatever it is. Draw to that, talk specifically about the number of years that you've worked within that industry, and talk about, talk candidly, I should say, about your experiences, talk, and sort of the references that you've gone through. Again, in turn, you could also be plugging information gaps by talking about that, and it will help build trust with the reader if they see on your author profile you've got 10 years in experience. You talk about those experiences when giving opinions to sort of new facts that come out in the market or anything like that. You see how you can tie it all together to create a really sort of strong piece of content that will answer the query in particular as well. Next part here. So again, this is a bit of a run along from some of the previous points above, but ensuring that you can demonstrate this experience, expertise, authority, and trust, or the EEAT in your content is absolutely critical here. So, talking a little bit vaguely here, but present information in a trustworthy manner, with clear sourcing and sort of evidence of expertise. So I've mentioned in the past that, drawing on your experiences, talking about how many years you've used within, or how many years you've got within that specific industry is a positive signal as well. Also, use technical language where relevant. It really sort of shows a broad and deep knowledge of a specific topic. You may yourself not think you work in a technical, quote unquote, sort of subject area, but actually if you can break down maybe the mechanisms of how or certain things in your industry work, this can be a huge pro. So I'm actually going to show you an example of a B2B eyelash supplier, some content that I came across that has performed really well. It's sort of been hockey sticking over the last few years, hasn't been impacted by helpful content update, and so far as of 11th of March there's been no impact on the no impact from the core update, I should say. So Flawless Eyelashes by Loretta. As I said, they're an eyelash supplier, so they supply lash technicians with all their kit and everything like that. So the owner, Loretta, really knows her stuff around eyelashes, as you'd expect. But when you go through some of their content, you'd actually see that she really understands the science behind the sort of lash replenishment cycle. So in this content here, how many eyelashes do you lose a day? She actually goes into some depth around that sort of eyelash growth cycle. She talks around the specific number of eyelashes per eye, how long the cycle takes, the three sort of phases between it, and actually shows a real sort of technical understanding of human eye health, right? And talks around the sort of specific phases with the scientific names to describe them as well. So when we cross-reference this with a lot of her competitors, surprisingly enough, they don't provide this sort of content. And it's this sort of content where you really show, again, the sort of depth of knowledge on a certain subject area that will always prevail, basically. So thumbs up to the team at Flawless Lashes. I thought it was, fantastic what they do. I sort of touched on this. Ensure author credentials are clear and obvious. Do that in your bio, guys. And I've also briefly touched on ensure that the editorial policy is clear as well. So, above the fold, if we can sort of say author by, fact checked by, edited by, reviewed by, and have two authors in the bio, I think that's two sort of gold stars, right? That'd be absolutely fantastic. But it's also good to outline the editorial process and policy of how these articles came about. So you could actually explain that sort of fact-checking process that Ben Alfrey writes it, Jim Jones fact-checks it, here's how they go about doing it. Anything that, again, sort of builds trust with the user and with Google as well. I think it's important to remember now that Google isn't just ones and zeros in a crawler. They do have a whole brand new team of search quality raters that if you're in that your money, your life category, so to speak, and you do hit that first page, you will automatically trigger a quality rater to check your site and, you know, validate a lot of what you say. So they'll be looking at your editorial policy, as well as sort of other things across the site, and making sure that your piece of content or your site in general, it is a trusted site, right? So it's always good to get these things sort of in place. I do think at one point, it won't be uncommon for the search quality raters to be validating or fact checking a lot of this stuff across other industries that aren't specifically YMYL. So, you know, set yourself up for the future, I think is the message there. A couple more points here. So publication date, listing a publication date before the start of the content. I think most sites do this now. It's not necessarily going to move the needle, but it helps inform the user as to the timestamp of when it was written. So if there have been updates, and your content doesn't necessarily reflect that, hopefully the publication date can give insight into why maybe it's a little bit out of date, right? Ensure a clickable title tag. We know from the antitrust lawsuit last year that Google does use click signals as a ranking signal. So ensuring that your title tag is clickable, trying to get as many clicks from that first page is absolutely integral to holding those positions in the longer term. So ensure a clickable title tag. Implementing sort of anti-spam measures as well. So it's just things like ensuring your sites are free from sort of spammy elements. We mean this by overuse of display ads, really butchering the user experience. Again, we know sort of high authority news publications that do this at some scale, or have been doing this for some scale, have always been rewarded, and I'll be really interested to sort of see what happens to those in the coming weeks as well. But with sort of user engagement being a small sort of ranking signal, I would expect that heavily sites that are heavy on the ad side that really are at the expense of the user and the user experience actually reading that article will be punished. So just, keep the ads sort of natural and out the way of, where the content is sitting, basically. Simply implement structured data where relevant as well. So mark it up, where it's necessary as well. Structured data's been around for a while, and you should always look to do this with most articles that need it as well. And finally, link to your best quality articles from the homepage. Again, it may seem super obvious, but as part of the helpful content update classifier last year, we know that Google will hit your homepage. They will crawl a handful of pages that are easy to find, and then essentially make a decision, so to speak, on the quality of your site and apply that sort of classifier across the site. And the reason they do this is they don't have the time and resource to crawl every single web page that exists on the internet, because it would cost them far too much money, right? And this is especially true now after the AI boom and essentially the kind of web bloat that has now come about. So they will crawl a handful of your articles, determine whether they like those or not, and then essentially apply those sort of signals across the rest of the web. So if you've got a poor homepage that's thin on content, doesn't really answer a user query, is quite light on the ground in sort of general, and is maybe just like an out-the-box theme that hasn't really had too much done to it, the chances are Google isn't really going to respond too well to that article. So at the very minimum, make your homepage your best page, make the article or pages it links to the best pages as best you can, and at least you set yourself up to be seen more favorably from Google in that sense as well. So that pretty much draws the end of it. As I said, we do actually package this up into our content sort of brief for a specific writer, and as you can see, each brief for a specific keyword is sort of 9-10 pages long. So we'll go through the basics, we'll then explain sort of the information gaps, and then we'll sort of run through like the writing fundamentals as well, explaining some of these points, and then we'll go into things like content structure and various sort of bits. So everything is very data driven, but we also make sure that there's plenty of room there for the writer to express their creativity, to leverage their expertise. And we see these briefs and our checklist as more of a guide, based on what the SERP says, based on what the user data says, that in respect of what content they want answering or what information they want to know, but they're also free to sort of put their own spin on it and take it off in a particular tangent if they want to. So, as I said, this sort of approach has been getting us really good success in the last sort of 12-ish months, and even more so after the helpful content update. We didn't have any of our client sites that we engaged with on content being hit by that. Of course, the core update is still rolling out, so we won't know explicitly how those sites have done until that is completed. And then, of course, we have another update coming in May. So there might be a bit of turbulence over the next sort of 2 quarters or so. But we're confident that up until this point, this has served us really well. And I'd recommend that you guys follow too. So if you've enjoyed this content, please do subscribe to the channel. It means that we can create more content like this. Drop a like on the video and give me a comment as well. How's the core update been treating you? What sort of content do you like to create? What sort of guidelines and structures do you like to follow when creating content? Has the new Google update, has it sort of made you rethink your content strategy? I'll be really keen to know as well. So until next time, thanks guys.